Disclaimer. This guide is for the purposes of fun and generally is targeted for hobbyists and those interested in class fantasy. Shaman tanking is not widely accepted, nor is it viable for high-end content. This guide works best for people that wish to try something new with friends and enjoy themselves. Do not expect to be invited to raids or even dungeon groups as a shaman tank. That being said, have fun and enjoy tanking as a shaman. Hello everyone, Melder on TV here. Today, I would like to discuss something that I find very interesting and is also highly controversial. Something in the same vein as my Resto Shaman leveling guide. I think this one takes the cake, however, as I have decided to analyze the capability for Shaman to tank in vanilla. Yes, you heard me right, Shaman tanking. You see, the thing is, there is a boatload of evidence that Shaman were supposed to mirror Paladins in every way, even in tanking potential. We all know, however, that Blizzard's favorite class, DefCam Best Fan, I'm looking at you guys, outshone Shaman in many ways. The same can be said for tanking, even if Paladin tanks aren't the best. So, what evidence do we have that Shaman were perhaps originally built to have tanking capability? Well, the first is Rockbiter weapon enhancement, as it causes additional threat with each attack. Number 2 is Earthshock, which, in addition to doing a good amount of damage and being an interrupt, produces a high amount of threat as an intentional effect. Number 3 is Stone Skin Totem, which reduces melee damage taken for you and all your party members. Number 4 is the talent in the enhancement tree, Shield Specialization, which when fully ranked increases chance to block by 5% and increases the amount blocked by additional 25%. Number 5 is the enhancement Anticipation talent, which increases your chance to dodge by 5% when fully ranked. Number 6 is Toughness, also in the enhancement tree, working in the same way as in Warriors, increasing the armor contribution from items by 10% when fully ranked. And finally, at number 7, we have Parry as an enhancement talent, which is not passively learned in Shaman. This gives Shaman another potential basis for damage reduction. Of course, there are other situational, perhaps non-direct, points of evidence like Stoneclaw Totem for keeping mobs busy and off your party members, and Grace of Air, which increases your dodge and armor via agility. So, going over that list, I say that there is, or at least there was, a ton of thought going into Shaman providing a tank role, or at least an off-tank role, in early vanilla. So, what happened? Why aren't Shaman tanks viable or heavily played? To answer that extremely complicated question, we must dig deeper. Let's first look at the pros and cons of Shaman tanking. For this section of the video, I would like to give a huge shout out to Elysium forum poster and player Totem Tank. I would definitely check out his guide. There will be a link in the description. Totem Tank has personally tanked all pre-raid 5 and 10 man content with his Shaman, and his guide is a huge inspiration for this video. Also, some of the footage you are seeing is from the classic WoW YouTuber Magus, who has VODs of tanking on his Shaman. Definitely go check out his channel for more. Alright, let's go over the strengths. Number 1. Shaman have high avoidance. In Totem Tank's blue BIS and BOE gear, he claims approximately 26% dodge, 8% parry, and 15% block. Number 2. Shaman have probably the most opening threat potential of any tank with Chain Lightning, Earthshock, and Lightning Shield. Number 3. An interrupt on a short 6-second cooldown in the form of Earthshock. Number 4. Higher DPS than Protection Warriors, and perhaps even at best above or at worst on par with Feral Druid tanks. Damage can even be increased with Magma or Fire Nova totems. Number 5. High utility in the form of totems. As you probably already know, Shaman have a totem for almost every situation, so you can help your healer or DPS out depending on the situation. Well, that seems pretty peachy, right? Hold on, we haven't gone over the weaknesses. The first weakness is that Shamans will never have the damage mitigation that a warrior will. Warriors have higher armor and the potential for more blocks and damage reduction via shield block and shield wall. Shaman really don't have any oh crap buttons like a warrior does. Number 2 is the lack of an actual taunt. Yes, we have Stoneclaw, but that isn't as great as taunting the mob immediately off the healer. Stoneclaw isn't foolproof, and once the totem is destroyed, the mob will move right back to the person with the highest threat on the table. However, the good news is, you will not be tanking raids as a Shaman, so this shouldn't be an issue. In essence, Earthshock is your taunt, but we will go over that later. Number 3 is the high mana cost of spells. This limits your damage, but thankfully not your threat as much. However, this does mean more downtime between pulls, and you will need to drink often. like a paladin. Make sure to bring some mana potions with you before embarking into the dungeon and grab at least 2 to 3 stacks of water. Number 4 is the lack of any tier raid gear. Without high-end gear promoting tank-specific abilities or increasing threat generation, Shaman are left in the dust. This is particularly damning, as according to Totem Tank, this is the only real thing that prevents Shaman from tanking raids. Finally, number 5 is the lack of acceptance for Shaman tanks. You will be met with adversity when others in the group count the amount of people in their group and can't find the tank. Then they will be even more mad when you tell them you're the tank. I will stress again that this is a venture that I would embark on with friends and guildies before really trying it out with pugs. Hopefully it'll prove some people wrong. Okay, so we went over pros and cons. Let's talk about talents. I have found a total of 2 builds which could be viable for tanking 5 and 10 mans. The first comes from Totem Tank. The build is 8-29-14 and focuses on damage mitigation with some self-healing potential and utility. First, in the enhancement tree, we will put in 5 points in the shield specialization for increased block chance and block effect. Next, put 5 points into Thundering Strikes for an extra 5% crit. Remember, the more we crit, the more attacks we get per unit time with Flurry, and the more attacks per unit time, the more threat per unit time via Rockbiter. After this, put 5 points into Anticipation for 5% extra dodge. Now, it's time to fill up Flurry for the 30% increased attack speed for the 3 hits following a critical strike. Finish this tier off with Toughness for an extra 10% armor contribution from items. In the next tier, put 3 points into Elemental Weapons for a 20% increase to your Rockbiter attack power bonus for additional threat, and 1 point to gain parry for more damage mitigation. In the Elemental tree, we will take 5 points in Convection to reduce mana cost of shocks and lightning spells, and Elemental Warding to reduce fire, frost, and nature effects from enemies by 10%. In the Restoration tree, on the first tier, take Tidal Focus to reduce the mana cost of all heals. Next, take Totemic Focus to make placing your totems down more mana efficient. After this, make sure to grab Nature's Guidance as it increases the chance to hit for melee and all spells by 3%. Missing will reduce your damage and threat, so this talent is paramount. Finally, take Totemic Mastery to increase the totemic effects of your totems to 30 yards. This will allow ranged casters and healers to benefit from your totems at max distance if needed. The second talent build comes from the Stalria subredditor Rolzul in their post entitled The Shaman Tank. The link for this will also be in the description. This build is 16-35-0 and focuses on more damage potential coupled with a bit of control. Going further into enhancement than Totem Tank's build, this takes both Weapon Mastery for 10% more damage with weapons, and Storm Strike for an extra white hit, and increased nature damage taken by the target of the effect from 2 nature sources, and this effect lasts 20 seconds. Then, moving over to the Elemental tree, in addition to Confection and Elemental Warding, put 2 points in Earth Scraps to increase the health of your Stoneclaw totem, which will give you more time to respond to mobs, a point into Elemental Focus for a 10% chance of clear casting after an offensive spell hit, and 5 ranks into Reverberation to reduce the cooldown of shocks by 1 second, which is pretty nice as Earth Shock is effectively your taunt. Okay, there was a lot of good information there with talent choices. I suggest picking the one that makes the most sense to you and try it out, or hey, you can try to build your own. Next, let's move on to threat generation. Threat is generated from 2 main sources, Rockbiter Weapon and Earth Shock. Totem Tank explains that Rockbiter Weapon adds threat to your weapon at a rate of 74 times the speed of the weapon per attack. This actually means weapon speed doesn't matter, as the threat per second, or TPS, doesn't change. However, haste does matter, and as a Shaman we get haste via Flurry. Flurry will allow you to increase your TPS as you will attack faster regardless of your base weapon speed. Our next main source is Earth Shock, as it produces 2 times as much threat as the damage of the shock itself. So, the more damage Earth Shock does, the more threat you will produce. However, as I'm sure you are thinking, Earth Shock is also mana expensive, especially at higher ranks. Because of this, Totem Tank recommends having 3 ranks of Earth Shock at the ready. Rank 1, which should be used strictly for interrupts. Rank 5, which should be used for both pulls and over time as you would stack Sunder Armor if you were a warrior. And finally, Rank 7 as your taunt to pull off of others as it produces the most threat. This strategy of using multiple ranks of Earth Shock will ensure the most mana efficiency. Also remember that healing generates threat. That being said, don't be afraid to heal yourself in times of desperation, as it will add to your TPS. Okay, so we're moving along, but there is more to go over. let's take a look at tanking rotations. Totem Tank breaks the Shaman tanking rotation into 3 distinct phases. The first phase is pre-pull. Before actually pulling the mob, drop down your totems. The most common ones you will use is Stone Skin as your earth for decreased melee damage taken, Grace of Air as your wind for increased dodge, armor, and crit via agility, and Mana Spring as your water to regain mana during the fight. The fire totem slot is situational. You can use fire and frost resistance for reducing elemental damage, or magma and fire totem for AoE damage. If you are fighting a boss or a single target mob, drop searing for a single target dot. If you have 2 shamans in your group, make sure the other shaman provides Strength of Earth and Healing Stream to both increase your damage and provide a healing over time effect. They could also drop Wind Fury totem for the other melee DPS. Next, make sure Rockbiter is up and won't fade off during the fight. Also make sure Lightning Shield is up for more initial AoE threat. Also, before pulling, make sure to have at least half mana to sustain repeated castings of Earthshock. And make sure to mark the kill order of your pull. This is very important, as it will ensure everyone is attacking the target you have the most threat on, therefore limiting damage going to other players. The second phase is the actual pull and setting up aggro. To pull, target the mob to be killed first, which should be Skull, and cast Chain Lightning, if a multi-mob pull, or Lightning Bolt for single target pulls. Next, cast Earthshock rank 5 on the primary target to establish threat. The third phase is sustaining aggro. In this phase, make sure to auto-attack the main target and continue to cast Earthshock rank 5 or an equivalent on the target on cooldown to maintain threat until it's dead. Think Sunder Armor and Warrior. Then move to the next target in the kill order and rinse and repeat. Remember to cast Earthshock rank 1 if you are just trying to interrupt the target. Rank 5 should be used to maintain threat. There is another situational phase that hopefully won't happen all the time. This phase only occurs if someone pulls off of you. In this scenario, use max rank Earthshock, which is usually rank 7 if you're level 60, as your taunt to pull the mob off of the other player, and continue the normal rotation. Remember, warrior tanks also lose threat. It happens. The key is to not panic. Make sure the DPS are attacking the right mob and use Earthshock to regain control. Totem Tank also suggests limiting the amount of threat you produce on the initial mob after casting Chain Lightning and Earthshock. The reason behind this is that the first mob is usually the one that dies first, and it may be a waste of mana to keep refreshing Earthshock on this target. Instead, use this time as an opportunity to establish more threat on the other targets. Alright everyone, let's talk about stat priority. The stat priority looks like this, with stamina being the most important, followed by defense rating, mitigation in the form of dodge, parry, and agility, hit, both spell and melee, and finally strength. Number 1 is stamina because the more hit points you have, the longer you stay alive. It's simple as that. Also, a high health pool is very important as we aren't in plate. Number 2 is defense, as it reduces the chance a mob or boss will critically strike you. Remember kids, crits are bad, okay? Number 3 is mitigation and agility. Dodge, parry, and agility are all forms of mitigation in their own way, and mitigation is very important as it makes the healer happy and keeps you alive longer. Dodge and parry are of course static mitigation and are very important, but agility offers us a lot as well. Every 20 points of agility increases your crit chance and dodge chance by 1%, and increases your armor by 2 points. All these factors from agility benefit you as a tank, either as providing raw damage mitigation in the form of dodge and armor, or increasing your threat generation as more crit equals more flurry procs. Number 4 is spell hit and melee hit. These are self-explanatory, as the more you hit, the more damage you could potentially do, and therefore the more threat you produce. Very important. Number 5 is strength. Of course strength is all well and good, as it increases your white hit damage, but agility is more beneficial in the long run as it does so much for us. Bottom line, strength can't hurt you unless you take it in the place of agility. Next, let's quickly talk about race selection. As stated previously, this build is about having fun and trying out something new. Because of this, I personally wouldn't spend too much time thinking about what racials are best for Shaman tanking. Instead, I would pick racials that are helpful for raid and dungeon healing or PvP. However, if you really want to tank on your Shaman the majority of the time, then racial abilities may be important to you. As in Protection Warriors, I believe Tauren are the best choice because of the 5% total health increase via Endurance. Also, War Stomp is amazing for situational AoE stun. It is basically an oh crap button. Oh, and Nature's Resistance isn't shabby either. My second favorite choice is Troll because of Berserking, which increases your attack speed depending on your current HP. The less health you have, the faster your attacks become. Pair this with Flurry for some insane threat generation. And let's not forget regeneration, which not only increases your health regen outside of combat by 10%, but also allows for 10% of that out of combat regen to occur while in combat. This isn't a ton of health, but it could mean the difference between life and death as you wait on a heal. My last choice is Orc. Blood Fury is great for some additional damage, but it comes at a cost of reducing all incoming heals by 50%. That's huge, and not a great idea to use at all when tanking. Hardiness is great for stuns, but since most mobs don't stun, it's super situational and not better than the other talents we've talked about. Finally, Axe Specialization is nice for some extra hit rating, but, again, not better than Endurance or Berserking in my opinion. Again, ladies and gents, when it comes down to it, pick the race you like the best. Or, if racials are very important to your endgame progression, pick the race that will be most beneficial in those roles. Tanking should be secondary. Finally, let's talk about gear. All of the best in slot items are mail. There is no surprise here, as mail provides the most armor a shaman can wear. The more base armor we have, the more physical damage we mitigate. There is a best in slot list for shaman tanks on Totem Tank's forum post that I highly suggest checking out so you can plan out the dungeon you want to run in order to get the gear. Don't get discouraged that all the items on this list are obtained through high level content. You can of course tank while leveling if you want, as long as you have the right talents and gear with optimal stats. Well, we've made it. That sums up the Shaman Tanking Guide. I really hoped you enjoy watching this as much as I enjoyed making it. This is something truly interesting that I will be trying myself both on the new, fresh Light's Hope server and in Classic WoW. I hope I somewhat answered the question originally posited. Shaman just aren't viable for raids in the same way Paladins aren't, but additionally, the low base armor and lack of tier gear really seals the fate for any would-be Shaman raid tank. Please don't forget to check out Totem Tank's guide as well as Magus' YouTube channel for Shaman tanking content. Links are below. I really want this video to serve as a type of sanctuary where Shaman tanks or inquisitive viewers can come and discuss tanking as a Shaman. So, that being said, I implore everyone to drop as much knowledge on the subject they can in the comments section below. Let's make this a mecca for discussing Shaman tanking. Also, let me know if I have missed anything or if anything requires clarification. If you like this video, please leave a like below. If you enjoy this type of content or are interested in other types of videos we make here at DefCamp and Melderon TV, don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more DefTalk interviews with WoW creators and enthusiasts, Melderon's Classic WoW vlogs, and Super Plate Brothers Let's Plays. Also, join us on Discord to be part of the DefCamp Melderon TV community, and follow us on Twitter for video updates and more. Links are in the description. Thanks for watching. This is Melderon signing off. Peace, my Shaman brothers. May the ancestors be with you.